Matt Powers is he's a teacher, an educator, a soil lover, a regeneration of all things. And I say that because he's not just about soil regeneration, but he's really about the regeneration of the earth and the regeneration of humanity and the regeneration of how we live and how we interact and how we connect. And it's such an honor to have him part of our community and to have him in the world right now to learn from and to connect with. So welcome, Matt.
Thank you for having me.
So Matt, I'm really curious. How did you come into caring about the soil and regeneration?
I didn't seek it out. I didn't initially, even when I started gardening, think too much about the soil. I mean, people said, you just needed to add manure, or compost or manure. And it just, the classic organic gardening kind of shtick, and so I just went with what the magazines were saying, like Mother Earth News and Heirloom Seed Gardener, and I just kind of just was focused on the seeds. That was like my first deeper dive, was the seeds. And so I started saving my own seeds, and the plants instantly got better. So it was like I was doing organic gardening, then I became a seed saver. And then I started dealing with incredible high heat, and I wanted my gardens to expand. But it was just 112 degrees ambient. And when you've got bare soil and it's dark, magnifies that. So we were getting up to 140 degrees. And so I had to figure out like how to do this. And so then I started seeing like videos of people growing in the desert, people greening the desert,
Yes.
And then also growing, at high altitudes in tundra. So it's like cold desert, right? So I just saw all these examples and was really inspired, and then started getting into permaculture. And then permaculture was so interesting because the earthworks, the composting, the systematic thinking, and then the ecosystemic thinking was like vital for me, because I was like, oh, that's why that doesn't grow well there. And all these realizations started arriving. I was like, the rows in my garden point down the hill, so the water erodes all their soil away. And so like I realized like all these things that were mortifying but obvious once you saw from an ecosystemic perspective. And then like I keenly remember the soil section of Jeff Lawton's course, him being like, this is the area where some people get really interested. And I was like, not me, let's keep going to get to the food. And it was like, and I was like, okay, that's how you do your compost? Good. Boom, let's go. And I did the actions, I did composting, but I didn't care too deeply to like go and do more research. Like I took everything at face value still.
Right.
And so I started doing that. I had a great result. And that's probably why, because I kept getting great results, from doing what people said. But what happened was, as I started teaching, because I'm a teacher, and so the highest level of learning I know is teaching. And so that's why we encourage all of our kids in my classrooms and in my courses, all my students, to become the teachers, and take part in that process. And so I'm teaching this stuff, and people start bringing up stuff that I'd never heard about. People started bringing up stuff that they learned at university. And I became suddenly aware that the lingo of permaculture didn't quite overlap with the lingo in the universities at all. And then other perspectives like Korean natural farming, like EM, effective microbes, that whole facultative fermentation decomposition world, all those kinds of things. And then, like speaking of like, verbiage, biofertilizer means two different things. Colloquially, it means these fermentations in these sealed containers that people are doing in natural farming things. But in the scientific world, it means microbes that actually provide food to plants.
That's right.
So, you know what I mean? So it's like I had to like really get into it to really understand how the difference in language,
Yeah.
the difference in what to focus on,
Yeah.
because it's such a broad territory that you can focus on almost anything. I realized that I had to like actually understand this. And I started working directly with Dr. Elaine Ingham.
Yeah.
She helped me a little bit with my first book. She really kind of gave me this like nod and encouragement to go deeper though. And same thing with Rosemary Morrow. Those two women have been consistently incredible influences in my life.
Yeah.
Kind of like aunts or grandmothers in my life that have like
Yeah.
severely, you know, like shown me how wrong I was at times because they've got these incredible perspectives. And it's really helped me grow as a person. And so I began this study, and my first real in-depth study of soil was the Permaculture Student 2. And I did it to create the proper linchpin in my book that would have Dr. Elaine Ingham's biological farming in it. She said when we were working together that no one had done it properly.
Yeah.
No one really was listening to her.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'm like, she's like my mentor and everything. And I was like, I will listen, you know? And so I
Yes.
like gave her my manuscript afterwards when we were still working on it. And like, now tell me what I did wrong. And she went through it. And then I brought it to like Peter McCoy, Radical Mycology. And I'm like, what did I do wrong? And then he went through the whole thing,
That's
found all the
amazing.
fungal sides of things. And then I went over it again and was like, okay, well, if this is true, then this connects to here. And then it was this dialogue, this dialectic progression that I've learned soil through. And then it's been these conversations with the author of Dirt, Erosion of Civilizations, Dr. David Montgomery,
Yeah.
or Dr. Gerald Pollack, discoverer of fourth phase water, or I would say describer of fourth phase water, because we've all seen that there's multiple people have been touching on the same, you know what I mean,
Yes. Yes.
multifaceted reality here. But essentially, it's been this process of diving into the complexity, seeing how my initial just taking things at face value is what everyone's doing, just in a very niche way. And
Yeah.
so I set out to do what I did in the Permaculture Student 2, which is gather as many differing perspectives, almost
Yeah.
disagreeing perspectives, and find out
Yes.
why they still work. Like,
I love
if
that.
they're
I
so
love
wrong,
it.
because this is the camps thing in soil. There's these soil camps, and they're like, you
That's right.
can't do what they do. It'll kill everything. And it's like, you go
Yes.
to their farm and you're like, it looks pretty good, even though you're killing everything. I don't know. And so I set about to create a unified understanding, bridging the gap between all these different camps. And I ended up really coming to an understanding of soil that's holistic, that bridges biology and chemistry, that opens up the world to a completely new perspective, much like permaculture, like open the floodgates of understanding. The realizations that are in that book for me and for everyone that I've talked to are, it's like now we can understand soil, animal, plant health as one thing. So that's really how it happened. I basically was following the breadcrumbs and got led here.
I love it. And I love the deeper truth that there is and are many ways to building the soil very, very successfully. I love that you brought it all together, and you have such a gift to dial it into language that almost anybody can really understand and really get and relate to. So I really love that about your writing and about your videos, and about the way you show up and interview people as well. What is the most important piece when caring for the soil?
Mm. I tend to see things as overlaps, right? And like, because
Hmm.
these things evolved in tandem, it's
Hmm.
hard to say like one above the other in a hierarchy. Um, but I would say that plants are the key, because proper photosynthesis creates the organic matter, carbonaceous matter in the soil that actually holds the electrons, that actually is the energy bank of the soil. And so people are like, oh, you know, you need organic matter for like soil life. It's like, that's part of it, sure. But
Yeah.
that plant will stimulate the life. That plant will feed that life, will bring in that stability. It will break down into the organic matter. It will provide seeds for the next generation.
Mm.
It will also reduce into the soil protons. So we're talking about it taking, you know, like all that energy from the sun, you know, working with water, hydrolysis, releasing this H plus, you know, into the soil. It's it's doing all this at the same time as it's releasing exudates into the soil, the carbonaceous sugars. Um, Hopefully not your simple sugars, hopefully more complex sugars, because those last longer, which makes sense, right? You know, you take your
Right.
simple sugars and you stir them up and they go into water, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
so healthy plants are going to not just put out the more complex sugars and polysaccharides, right? But they're going to be putting this energy, conducting energy into the soil at the same time.
Mm.
So, and that's one of the newer realizations that that we've had, but it's tied up into stuff that we've always known too. So it makes sense to a
Yeah.
lot of people who have been working with soil for a long time. And um, it's those plants, it's photosynthesis, that is the linchpin between air and the terrestrial, and the sun and the terrestrial. The soil isn't gonna, I mean, yes, the sun goes down, you know, like 8 to 12 inches in some soils, but it's not going to do the services that that the plants are doing. So you could add amendments, you could be thinking about
Mm.
different levels of water and all these things, but it's really the plants themselves that are going to do it. And that's why we have so many varieties of plants, because we have so many bioregions with differing stressors and nutrients, so that these plants have evolved to do this service in those areas to create those soils.
I love that. And you do a great job of breaking that down in your book with pictures, of course, and your videos. And the visual I'm getting as you're describing this is almost like all the good stuff in the soil is like the guitar, or all the different types of guitars or instruments that there are in the world. And then the plant or the human comes in and who gets the inspiration, which might be the sunlight, all the other things, and plays those instruments, which end up all talking to each other and making this incredible music. And that's this
Yeah, we're just fungal
visual.
beings. So the
Yeah.
reality is that we're fungi too, and all animals are. And so we are doing what like the fungi are doing in the soil. So
That's
AMF,
right.
arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, or just call them AMF or AM fungi, they are actually cueing secession. So they have like infinite numbers of varieties. They can modulate and steal genes, steal entire nuclei from other
It's amazing.
species.
Right.
And then they can release in their spores any combination they want. And so that they're doing constantly is sensing the environment and then responding. Just like a question is being asked and then an answer is being given that pushes things further, deepens our understanding. This is a response that deepens the expression of nature.
Mm, I love it. What keeps you connected to what's meaningful for you?
Meditation. I've been meditating for several years now, and there's something about it that just allows us to lengthen the distance between thought and expression. So you can have thoughts, but do you express those thoughts?
Right.
And for me, being that impulsive teenager that just said whatever he felt, did whatever he thought was right, the first thought he had in his head, worked great on bass for improvising, but other than that, I have the ability to think and consider and question and also to laugh at myself and also to see the parts of myself that are still struggling and to place that properly within myself rather than it being on the edge of my stress where I feel ragged, you know what I mean? Being like, no, you feel ragged because you're tired and you need to do this. And those feelings are from here and they belong there.
Right.
So yeah,
you have to look after yourself. Yeah, just like you look after the plants. Where can people find your books? Where can people find more out about you?
Well, I have a bunch of my books for free because I'm a Kickstarter person, which means that people gave to me. And so I'm all about giving back. And I'm also like a former public school teacher. So it's like I started this whole journey because I wanted to make sure that this information got out. Yeah. So my first book and my second book in the Permaculture Student series are free. So one of them took, wasn't very long to write. The first book only took 2 weeks to write. The pictures and all that stuff took longer. But the second book took 2 years.
Wow.
But both are free. And it's because I believe it's a human right to know this information, to live properly on the earth. It's a human right. It's a birthright. And so, I mean, all the animals have it figured out, right? All the plants have it figured out. We should too,
I agree.
So the permaculturestudent.com has the Permaculture Student 1 and the Permaculture Student 2, both for free. They're PDFs, easy to download, easy to keep, but I also have free courses. And if you're looking for this book, that's also on my website. I have copies here that I sign and send out to you. But it's also on Barnes & Noble and Amazon. We were number 7 last week on the Amazon charts.
Congratulations.
So that's pretty crazy because that's not even like where we're emphasizing really. So yeah, you could get my books there and you could check out regenerativesoilscience.com because I've got a free webinar that is next week that everyone's invited to. And then I have a soil course, an introduction to regenerative soil course starting the 22nd of February this month. So please join us in the free webinar, join us for the course, check out the book and get excited because there's a completely new paradigm in soil health and all life that we now have the ability to talk about, to show visually, and to connect to stuff that you already know, that is already kind of floating around, that we kind of knew this about and you knew that about. But once you put them together, everything's going to change.
Magic happens, right? Yeah, magic happens. Awesome. And Matt, how can we support your mission? How can we jump in with you and just like get the word out about what you're doing and about soil, aside from watching your webinars and getting your books, and what else can we do?
Start living it, right? You could share with other people, you could tell other people, that's awesome. But the most important thing is that we actually, all this information becomes habitual and behavioral. And the great thing is, this is the best food. This is the best
That's right.
soil. This is our, and what we're going to see is very quickly, there's going to be like, what the best food is becomes self-evident. That's what's so cool about this, is I can hold up a
Isn't it?
picture of nature and nature tells you, not me. Like this
That's
is the
right.
coolest thing about this, is we're about to arrive at an understanding that you'll be like, everyone's going to be able to just express and talk about and point to and grow and do these things. So, I mean, I've got a donate button on my page, thepermaculturestudent.com, if you want to support me that way, or just spread the word, live
Awesome.
it, love it.
Awesome. I love it.